בוקר טוב לכל ישראליתים בעיר פריירה ברטו, ערי סביבות פריירה ברטו, ערי במדינות ברזיל, ערי בישראל, ערי באחרות עמים. גם אסף בנמי קריספין לוי, רקוהן של קהילה פריירה ברטו, יישוב ישראלית פריירה ברטו. אני הייתי רוצה איתכם על רשובה של תורה, מפני תורה ראינו לא דתות, אף תורה יכול לקחת אותנו חזרה לישראל, לקרוא נחלה של אבותינו, אשר יהוה נשבע לתת לנו ישראליתים. Here the elder Assaf Benami, Crispin, Levi. I would like to greet you with shalom, with a good morning, and I would like to call your attention to the continuation of the statutes and the judges of the Torah. It's very important because the Torah is our life, like it is written in Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 4, from 1 until 10. Well, we stopped in the Torah at the item number 107. 107. A human corpse, and anyone who comes near it is ritually unclean. We're going to, I invite you to follow with me in Numbers, Bemidbar, chapter 19, verses 11 to 16. Let's go there. Numbers, Bemidbar, Numbers 19, verses 11 to 16. He who touches the dead of any human being is unclean for 7 days. He is to cleanse himself with the water on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day he is clean. But if he does not cleanse himself on the 3rd day, then on the 7th day he is not clean. Anyone who touches the dead of a human being and does not cleanse himself defiles the dwelling place of Yahweh. And that being shall be cut off from Israel. He is unclean. For the water for uncleanness was not sprinkled on him, his uncleanness is still upon him. This is the Torah. When a man dies in a tent, all who come into the tent and all who are in the tent are unclean for 7 days. And every open vessel which has no cover fastened on it is unclean. Is unclean. Anyone in the open field who touches someone is slain by a sword, or who has died, or a bone of a man or a grave is unclean for 7 days. Then we can see here this mitzvah. A human corpse, and anyone who comes near it is ritually unclean. For example, if you go to one place that is a human dead, and if you enter in the tent and you are impure for 7 days, you can't touch in the scriptures, in the Torah. You can't pray. You can't sing the songs with the name of the Eternal One, because these are kadosh things, and you can't defile the things of the Eternal One. And you must fulfill the period of purification according to the Torah. Well, the word of the Eternal One, the Torah, is explicit in this case. Anyone who touches the dead of a human being and does not cleanse himself defiles the dwelling place of Yahweh, and that being shall be cut off from Israel. He is unclean, for the water for uncleanness was not sprinkled on him. His uncleanness is still upon him. Well, and when there was the temple constituted with the Kohanim, and they prepared the water of purification of the heifer, that they killed it, and the person went to the funeral dead, went to the cemetery, and he was 7 days separated. He or she could not touch the sacred things. And on the third day, he went to the temple and got up the purification water from the Kohen to sprinkle upon him. And now we are going to exile. For example, I'm in Brazil, the other United States of America, the other in Europe, Asia, and so on. But you must fulfill this mitzvah, because you must to stay 7 days in our purification, because it is very important to observe the commandments of the Yahweh. You can see in Devarim 12, Devarim 4, Devarim 13, that the Eternal One charged of us, when you are in the midst of the nations, you are going to remember my statutes and judges. I always say, when you are in Israel, the promised land, the charge upon you is more, because you are in the promised land. You must fulfill the commandments of the Eternal One. But when the descendants of Israel are in the midst of the nations, we must remember them. Then for those ones who live in Israel, the promised land, the charging is more burden. You must fulfill these commandments. But for the other ones, spread out all over the nations, you must remember my statutes and judges. Well, let's see it in the oral law. This item number 107. 107. Bereshit 23. Bereshit, Genesis, Bereshit 23. 2. Bereshit 23. 2. Bereshit 23:2. And Sarah died in Kiriat Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan, and Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And then Abraham rose up from beside his dead and spoke to the sons of Heth, saying, then you can see that Abraham mourning for Sarah 7 days. And he was impure for 7 days. Because if you get to the cemetery, to the tent when is one dead man, corpse, you will be 7 days impure. Well, let's see this item in Yeshua's times, his time Eugene's times as well. The impurity of one corpse. Luke chapter 9, Luke chapter 9, verses 59 to 6. And he said to another, follow me. But he said, Master, let me first go and bury my father. And Joshua said to him, let the dead bury their own dead, but you go and announce the reign of Elohim. Then this man, and he asked Joshua, and he said to another, and Joshua tells him, follow me. But he said, Master, let me first go and bury my father. And Joshua said to him, let the dead bury their own dead, but you go and announce the reign of Elohim. And what are you going to understand that? Because the dead, everybody that is in the cemetery, in the tent of this dead, they were impure. Because that Joshua said, let the dead bury their own dead, but you go and announce the reign of Elohim, or it be the Torah, because the Torah is the reign of Elohim. Well, let's go to the other item number 108. The purification water purifies the ritually unclean. Bemidbar, the purification water purifies the ritually unclean. Bemidbar 19, 11, Bemidbar 19, 2 to 22. And this is the law of the Torah which Yahweh has commanded, saying, speak to the children of Israel, that they bring you a red heifer, a perfect one, in which there is not blemish, and on which a yoke has never come. And you shall give it to Eleazar, the priest, and he shall bring it outside the camp, and shall slaughter it before him. And Eleazar the priest shall take some of its blood with his finger, and sprinkle some of its blood 7 times toward the front of the tent of meeting. And the heifer shall be burned before his eyes. he burns its ride, and its flesh, and its blood, and its dung. And the priest shall take cedar wood, and hyssop, and scarlet, and throw them into the midst of the fire, burning the heifer. The priest shall then wash his garments, and shall bathe his body in water, and afterward come into the camp, but the priest is unclean until evening. And he who is burning it washes his garments in water, and shall bathe his body in water, and is unclean until evening. And a clean man shall gather up the ashes of the heifer, and shall place them outside the camp in a clean place, and they shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel, for the water for uncleanness. It is for cleansing from sin. And he who gathers the ashes of the heifer shall wash his garments, and is unclean until evening. And it shall be a law forever to the children of Israel, and to the stranger who sojourns in their midst. He who touches the dead of any human being is unclean for 7 days. He is to cleanse himself with the water on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day he is clean. But if he does not cleanse himself on the 3rd day, then on the 7th day he is not clean. Anyone who touches the dead of a human being and does not cleanse himself defiles the dwelling place of Yahweh, and that being shall be cut off from Israel. He is unclean, for the water for uncleanness was not sprinkled on him. His uncleanness is still upon him. This is the Torah when a man dies in a tent. All who come into the tent and all who are in the tent are unclean for 7 days. And every open vessel which has no cover fastened on it is unclean. Anyone in the open field who touches someone is slain by a sword, or who has died, or a bone of a man, or a grave, is unclean for 7 days. And for the unclean being, they shall take some of the ashes of the heifer, burn for cleansing from sin. And running water shall be put on them in a vessel. And a clean man shall take hyssop and dip it in the water, and shall sprinkle it on the tent, and on all the vessels, and on the beings who were there, or on the one who touched a bone, or the slain, or the dead, or a grave. And the clean one shall sprinkle the unclean on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day. And on the 7th day he shall cleanse himself, and shall wash his garments, and bathe in water, and shall be clean in the evening. But the man who is unclean and does not cleanse himself, that being shall be cut off from among the assembly, because he has defiled the set-apart place of Yahweh. Water for uncleanness has not been sprinkled on him, he is unclean. And it shall be a law for them forever. And the one who sprinkles the water for uncleanness washes his garment, and the one who touched the water for uncleanness is unclean until evening. And whatever the unclean being touch is unclean, and the being who touches it is unclean until evening. Well, and I would like to stop here, and it's not necessary to explain these long verses, but I promise you that in the next study I will explain it carefully. This item, the purification water purifies the ritually unclean. I would like to thank your attention. Yahweh Baruch Atav Ramishpah Adam, Baruch Kol Israelitim Asher Shamu Oti, Yahweh Baruch Al Kol Ramishpahot Shel Israelitim Be-Israel Be Al Kol Goim, Baruch Gam Chachem Asher Shomerim HaTorah Shel Yahweh. Shalom להתראות, תודה רבה לשים לב שלך, תודה רבה לתרומות ומעשרים שלכם. תודה עד היום רמישי רבה, בהשם יהושע, השם של ברית עולם ורקועה של תורה. תודה.